Hello, is this the Wade residence? Yes, you're speaking with Mrs. Wade. Is there a problem? I'm very sorry, ma'am, but there's been a huge problem. You may have the wrong child.
What?
There has been a mix-up. We apologize because it is all our fault. There was a mislabeling, so the baby you've taken home may not be your biological son.
What the hell is this? You've waited 3 years to tell us that? Honey, hand me the phone immediately.
We only discovered this error recently. Other parents have been informed, but you're one of the last people on the list to know. You need to know because a lot of families may be coming over to yours to figure out if your son is actually theirs. I'm so sorry, and I apologize for the inconvenience.
The nurse quickly hung up. Hearing that the child they had loved and nurtured for 3 years may belong to another family was already bad enough. Imagining that their real child may have been taken by someone else was even more terrible, but the months that followed were downright exhausting. Every few days, a new family would come to conduct a DNA test on little Tommy and leave when they discovered that he wasn't theirs. It was traumatizing because they were always scared that they'd lose their son, over and over and over again. A year had passed since the phone call, and families were still knocking on the Wade's door. They couldn't take it anymore. It may have taken Mrs. Wade 5 years to give birth to a child, but it wasn't going to take her 5 years to realize that little Tommy wasn't hers. She'd always known it deep down. Little Tommy looked different from her and her husband. She didn't need a fortune teller to tell her that. She tried to send him off, but her husband convinced her to try a little harder. Another year passed and families were still coming. At this point, both Wades begun resenting little Tommy and agreed to send the 5-year-old to an orphanage. It was time to put their past behind them. Mom, where are we going?
We're going to your real home, little T. Here, you'll find your real parents.
Am I ever going to see you and Dad again?
Stop sprouting rubbish and run into the building. Now, move!
As I ran into the orphanage fearfully, I heard both my parents say,
Good riddance!
I couldn't understand why they felt that way, but it hurt me badly, and although I was little, I wasn't stupid. I knew I was being abandoned. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you never want to be abandoned. Trust me, it works. My first memory of a real loving home was the orphanage. Everyone adored me once I arrived, so it wasn't difficult for me to make friends. Being a good-looking child, I quickly found a family that wanted to adopt me. But 3 families later, I started wondering if I'd ever leave the orphanage. The families kept bringing me back because strangers always traced us back to wherever we traveled to and stopped by our house to take me for DNA tests. It traumatized these families because they didn't want their child to be taken away, but they had to comply with the DNA testing order since it was court-issued. They tried to handle it, but they couldn't anymore. They gave up and returned me to the orphanage. Most of them couldn't bear saying goodbye, so they just dropped me and ran away. I decided to enjoy my life in the orphanage because it seemed like I'd be there forever. If you give me your drink, I'll give you a chicken. Let's exchange, Steve told me one day during lunch at the orphanage. What if I want both my drink and your chicken? I asked, grabbing Steve's chicken from his plate and stuffing my face with it. Steve started crying, so I had to quickly give him my drink before the matron would hear him. You're such a crybaby. I can't believe we're best friends. And you're such a bully. I don't even understand how we became friends in the first place. I didn't understand how either. Steve and I had somehow become good friends in the orphanage over the years, and when I told him about my ordeal, he promised to help me find my real parents in the future, and we both laughed about it. Years flew by, and couples kept coming around to observe us. But by this time, rumors had spread about my ordeal, so no matter how cute I was, couples avoided me because they wanted peace of mind.
Tommy! Steve! Come here now!
Our matron called out one day, and we quickly ran to her office.
Today must be your lucky day. And I mean for the both of you. These 2 beautiful families have decided to adopt each of you. Greet them, then go pack up and clean up because you'll be leaving today.
I followed the man home while Steve followed the other family after we shared our goodbyes. But something felt off, so I wasn't very chatty in the car ride home.
And we're here. All right, hurry down, Timmy.
It's Tommy.
What did you say, Timmy?
Never mind. I didn't like this man. How could he be my new father? He opened the front door and entered with me.
Honey, we're home!
he sang, his wife quickly rushing out of the kitchen, but stopped right in her tracks when she saw me.
Eek!
She screamed.
Who's this stranger you've brought back home, you stupid man? This is not the young man I ordered. He's the wrong child. Return him immediately.
Wait a minute. Did she just say she ordered a young man? What are we, food? Well, I'd better be the wrong child for this family, because this was definitely the wrong family for me. I mean, my so-called adopted father couldn't even get my name right. It's Tommy, not Timmy for Pete's sake. The strange woman and man called the orphanage, and it turned out that the lady filing the adoption papers had swapped Tommy's and Steve's paperwork, so both families were asked to come back to the orphanage. "You almost stole my family," Steve said, playfully punching me when we met at the orphanage. "Please, have them. Your family is kind of weird. I'm glad it was a mistake and I'm not theirs. Good luck with them, dude." Look, at this point, anything is better than a man who refuses to understand there's a difference between Timmy and Tommy.
Steve!
The strange woman screamed and hugged Steve once she saw him.
We almost lost you, my dear. Dear Steve!
"I'm glad you found me again," Steve said, hugging them. What? He doesn't even know these guys. He just met them. What a set of weirdos.
Goodbye, Timmy!
Steve's new father screamed as they left the orphanage with the right papers and the right boy. "Oh my God, it's Tommy! Why can't you—"
Shh! Tommy!
our matron sang.
Your adoptive family is right behind you.
She continued, stopping me from saying anything I'd regret in the future. All the paperwork was filed correctly, and Steve and I followed the appropriate family home. Our adoptive parents also spoke to each other and bonded before leaving, allowing us to keep our childhood friends and attend the same school. I was lucky this time. The number of parents coming for DNA tests had dissipated. I was adopted by an amazing family, and I didn't lose my childhood best friend. We'd just rounded up our English classes and were having lunch at the cafeteria when I decided to open up to Steve. "Steve, so I've been doing some research, and I think I found a way to locate my parents. This is the best time to do it since we both have a little bit of freedom. We can just sneak out of school one day and go to the hospital." "You found the hospital where you were born? That's amazing. Let's do it." "Yeah." We lied to our parents that we had 2 extra periods that day, so once classes really finished, Steve and I snuck out of school and into the hospital. But once we got there, we had absolutely no idea concerning the next steps to take. After minutes of wandering, Steve approached the nurse at reception. "Excuse me, please. My friend is looking for his parents, and I think you guys lost them here." The nurse burst into laughter after listening to Steve.
Shouldn't you guys be in school?
"Shouldn't we have biological parents?" The nurse was perplexed, so Tommy explained his life story to her. "I really can't believe that the government still lets this hospital operate after you guys ruined so many families' lives."
Who are you living with currently?
"My adoptive parents."
Please, come with them tomorrow so we can continue this conversation. I really want to help you, Tommy, but I need approval from your parents first.
We went back to school and were picked up by our parents. During dinner, I told Mrs. Briggs, my new mother, about my activities and what the nurse had told me, but she looked distraught.
You really hate us this much?
"Huh? I don't hate you, Mom. I just want to know who my real parents are." She burst into tears.
What have I done wrong? I've given you everything, and you still want to leave me? Why do you hate me so much? What can I do to prove to you that we love you?
And that was the start of another mad part of my life. Mrs. Briggs stopped me from going to school and started homeschooling me so I didn't escape and find my real parents. She stopped me from seeing Steve and didn't allow me to step foot outside for a few months. I was miserable, so I unconsciously became rebellious and started causing problems at home. Mr. Briggs pitied me and convinced his wife to follow me to see the nurse, so we all went to the hospital together as one big happy family, despite the fact we were all secretly miserable. The nurse at the reception took us to the oldest doctor in the building. He was familiar with the mix-up that happened over 10 years ago. After going through my hospital file and testing me, he decided to start his parent hunt. He started by calling Mr. and Mrs. Wade. They were shocked to see me at the hospital, and although I remembered them, I ignored them and behaved like I didn't see them. "Mr. and Mrs. Wade?"
Yes.
"This is the boy you initially went home with, but you sent him to an orphanage because he wasn't yours, right?"
Yes.
If I may ask, did you ever run a DNA test on this boy to confirm if he actually was not yours?
I was sure.
Alright, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but we're going to have to ask you to do just that because we need to rule you out as his parents first before moving on to the next suspected family on our list.
That's fine. It's not like we have a choice anyway. This young man has caused us nothing but inconvenience ever since he came our way. How dare you speak badly about this amazing boy?
Mrs. Briggs landed a heavy slap on Mrs. Wade.
You don't need to say such a thing about a child, Mrs. Wade. He's right here, for Pete's sake.
Before we proceed, I have another question. Apart from getting traumatized because people were always knocking on your door and asking to find out if little Tommy was their son, did he do anything terrible in particular? Was he a badly behaved child?
No, he's always been a great child. He just came with a lot of problems.
Alright, we ran the DNA test, and I could literally feel the tension in the room as everyone waited. I couldn't help but feel tense, no thanks to Steve.
What if the Wades are your real parents?
He whispered. I don't know.
What if they're not?
I don't know, shut up. Mrs. Wade heard me scold Steve and shook her head in a, I hope you're not my son kind of way. After hours of waiting, the results came out and we all struggled to see them. Negative. The Wades were not my parents. I couldn't explain my emotions. I felt both happy and sad at the same time.
I knew it. Let's leave here, honey.
Alright, so we're done with the first set of tests. Tommy, meet me here next Monday for the second set. You can all go. Mrs. Briggs hugged me as we left, and Steve held my hand tightly. When we all got to the parking lot, we heard some noise and turned to see the nurse and doctor chasing us. They were out of breath when they finally spoke.
I'm so sorry. The trainee nurses got the results mixed up.
The real test came out positive. The Wades are Tommy's real parents.